All right, so family, welcome back to the mailroom, and you can see that I have a special guest here today. I want to say this: thank you all for all of your feedback, all of your comments, and because of all the stuff that I got, especially related to this COVID thing, I figured I'd bring in an expert. This is the Reverend Dr. Pastor Paul Leon Anderson.
I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor.
Hey, I always mess with that.
People always give you titles that you really don't deserve. So.
And Uncle Paul here is also very familiar with the Ebenezer family. You've actually been around for a quick minute, a few times, and familiar with Dr. Lynch, right?
Well, yeah, well, and also I go far back with Ebenezer as far as Pastor Ryan, because Pastor Ryan's daughter was my neighbor across the street on LaSalle Street, Marie Baxter. And so I go back to Ebenezer all the way back to the late 60s, early 70s.
Wow.
Yeah.
So at least now you have somebody that you can believe that's going to be a part of this thing for the day.
Yeah, as well as the Sutons.
Exactly.
So I go back to that.
That's good stuff. So part of the reason I wanted to bring you in this is because I had people that were asking a lot of questions about COVID and their faith level as opposed to their comfort level. I kind of messed with that a little bit last week. But one of the things that was also in the realm of the questions was, and I'm going to paraphrase this, all right? So there's people who have been there the entire time through the pandemic. The people who are in the media ministry, the people that are the musicians, the people that are up there on the praise and worship team. And some of the feedback that I got from them is that, I have the same concerns about COVID. I have family, but I've been serving faithfully. And to be very honest, I'm tired. That's what y'all said. I mean, I get it. I can relate to that. And not only were some of them saying that they were tired, but they're also like, well, how come there's some people who are actually a part of the staff and they have the choice of whether or not they get to come to church, but I'm on praise and worship. I'm a musician, you know what I'm saying? They get to stay home because of their concerns, but I have to show up. So, that's heavy hitter type of stuff. So I was like, let me go ahead and bring in some reinforcement. So what's your take on that?
Well, it's all a matter of perspective. That's what I look at. So first of all, I want to say congratulations on your podcast, and I'm sure you got quite a few listeners out there. So if you're not liking, if you're not following, if you're not sharing, if you're not tweeting, and all the other good stuff about this guy, do it because I'm his uncle, but because he's good as well. And so I wanted to say that first of all, and thank you for the invitation to be on this spot with you. But whenever you talk about COVID and all that we have seen, and all that we've been a part of, you're right. Those are some very valid feelings that people have. I look at it from this perspective. So I'm a pastor, right. and I have been pastoring for quite a few years. Matter of fact, the first church that I pastored was Rock Spring Baptist Church. I followed Reverend Dr. Lynch at one of it was his second church that he pastored. So I always tease and say that to him. So for those of you, I tease and I call Dr. Lynch my bishop. He gave me one of my first preaching assignments. But we met each other when we were 18, and so we have grown in ministry together. And so that means, So we've been affiliated with ministry together about 41 years. So we've known each other for a few years now.
A long time.
So and our birthdays happen to be in the same month, just a few days apart. And so it's always amazing how God puts you in unique situations. And so I can understand how some parishioners feel that way, as well as how you might have some people who are staff who feel a little bit differently. I being one, I've been on the front line ever since it started. Matter of fact, as I forestated, I'm a pastor. So being a pastor, you're in church all the time. It's your primary vocation, so to speak. It's your call in life. But there are those of us that we're husbands, we're sons, we're brothers, we're all of that, and so we have to do those duties as well. But when you talk about ministry and doing the work of God, it's a calling. I have always used as my guiding force, let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. I've been taught perseverance all of my life. My parents were sharecroppers. I'm the youngest of 9 children, both of them of 11, one of 11, and come from rural Wilkes County, Georgia. They did and made their way to Charlotte. And my dad, he had to work hard, and he always talked about being consistent, being persistent, always know that you can be counted upon. So when you talk about ministry, in no way did I ever think that I would shrink back my commitment to the gospel. I did those things that needed to happen by way of keeping myself safe, keeping my environment safe, even before I became vaccinated and even after I became vaccinated. You know, we're having this conversation together, and so for that reason, those of you who can't hear well and need to read lips, I don't have on a mask for that reason, but normally I follow all those protocols. But it becomes one of those things that we have to always be mindful of. God called us to be faithful unto death. And that means we don't quit, we don't give up, we don't give in. But please bear in mind, everybody needs a pause. Whenever Jesus did great miracles and great works of ministry with his disciples, you'll find out the scripture says they withdrew for a season. So there comes a time in all of our lives we need to take a break. But those breaks have to be planned whereby they don't bring an interruption in the work of ministry. You know, the Bible talks about in Ephesians, God has given us the fivefold ministry of those who are pastors, prophets, evangelists, and all of those who help in doing ministry. And we have to work cohesively together as well as work coordinatedly together. So we have to coordinate what needs to happen. So, our staff at the place where I pastor in Raleigh, the Fountain of Raleigh Fellowship, had to get that plug in since we're talking about ministry.
I was going to give you that at the
end.
Right,
and I appreciate that. And we're a young church. I mean, we've only been around for 11 years. And so, God has blessed us in those 11 years. And so, that was a pause when I didn't have staff there full time. And I did a lot of the work that needed to be done. People came in. We made sure that we staggered our times when we were in the office, but we did not shrink back. And what our commitment was to, first of all, to God, and then secondly, to our congregations to deliver ministry and to worship with them. We did the virtual platform as well as we have done the drive-in platform, and now we're doing the in-person way in which we've done ministry, but it's very different than what it was before. And I always remind everybody, in the midst of all of that, we keep persevering, we keep pressing on, because we know that the Bible teaches us that we who endure until the end, we're the ones who receive the crown of life. And so I think ministry has to be one that we focus on being consistent, knowing that if ever we lose a part, that means the whole does not operate effectively. Just as we have our physical bodies, we have eyes, we have ears, we have a nose, we have a mouth. I don't think your eyes will go on vacation for them. If they did, you'd be stumbling in the darkness. Right. Okay, they wrote songs about that too.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's important for us to realize that, we need each other. Everybody is very valuable. And if someone needs to take a little bit of time off, that's something that always can be worked out. But the whole part about just giving up, saying, I'm tired, we hear people in the world talk about burnout, but the Bible talks about we're supposed to always be on fire. So, and we sing the songs that God's Spirit is a fire within us that never consumes us because it's always burning. So I always remind everyone, if you really believe what you say you read, why don't we put it into action? So that's my take on that, in a quick and dirty, but I'd be happy to answer any of the questions you have for me.
Well, and I love that. So,
Sure.
One of the things that I always, and this is why I love having, people like yourself, and in particular you, because you've always kind of been a mentor to me in ministry, because you are on that more mature side, And
you're kind. Thank you.
Y'all know me. I tell folks, remember the EBC Sugar Creek, that's Joe Anderson Sr. I'm the junior. Make sure you get the right one. He's all the way saved, just like my uncle. I'm just still trying to get in. So,
well, you get there by grace.
Yes, thank God.
It's not by works.
Right.
So you're in.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I like to think of in terms of this whole thing that people were talking about is this. I love the fact that you mentioned be not weary and well doing.
Sure. Yeah.
But I do believe that a lot of times we do get tired.
Sure.
But here's the raw and the real, y'all. There's always going to be that 80-20 rule.
Oh yeah, and everything.
There's always going to be the thing where the majority of the work is being done by the minority of the people. And the thing is, what you really have to understand a lot of times is if you're called to do that, I wish there was going to be some great news there, but a lot of times you just have to do what it is you have to do. One of the things that I love, and we at the men's ministry, we've adopted this thing called a battle buddy.
Okay.
And what a battle buddy is that the battle buddy is a person who goes to war with you, and if nobody else comes out, you make sure that your battle buddy's in there.
Yeah.
It's because they're going through the same thing that you are. So what I would encourage a lot of people to do is this. You're going to have to go ahead and endure this. You're going to have to persevere. But find someone who's in that ministry with you.
Sure.
And instead of complaining, you know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying you're complaining because you're very justified in terms of how you feel. Sure. Trust me, I've been in this thing the entire time myself as well. But find someone who is going through it with you and make that person your battle buddy. That means one week you bring the coffee, next week I'll bring the coffee. This week you bring the donuts,
Sure.
next week I'll bring the donuts. Because come the truth be told, we gonna be here.
I'm gonna pass on the donuts. I'm a diabetic. I don't want to run my blood sugar, but I'm good with the coffee. I'm good with the coffee.
Yeah, well, I'll bring you some coffee.
Yeah.
You can bring me the donuts.
I'll bring you the donuts. Okay, just tell me how many and where you want them from.
Well, you know, I like that Krispy Kreme with the
I
cream on
knew
the
you
inside.
did. I knew you did. And
Man.
I will not yield to the temptation.
I'm trying to do better.
I will keep the box closed.
Right.
But I want to touch bases on what you said, because
Yeah.
one of the things that I think a lot of us and a lot of you might have found it to be true in your life is that, you know, when you do this kind of work that we've talked about, all that you've heard in the news, because remember, we've gone through, we have shared this pandemic with two presidential administrations. You shared it with two different groups of person in Congress. And they're basically polar opposites. So I can understand why a lot of people may have gotten weary, may have felt discouraged, because there was so much political pressure behind a medical situation that we pretty much made it a political situation. And that can really wear you down. And so that's where we have to always make sure that we keep our spirits where they need to be. You know, everybody should have someone you talk to. You know, if you don't have a professional therapist, or if you don't have a professional counselor, or someone that is your spiritual director. You know, I do spiritual direction for some people. You need to have someone, just like I have someone I talk with. You know, I'm not going to say there has never been a time in my life where I said, I am tired, I am done. But, you know, the moment you say you're done, you got to always remember, well, Christ wasn't done with us. And for that reason,
that's
I
why I
am
need an organ.
never
I need to
done.
put you
Okay.
E
Well,
flat.
I hear it already in my ear. I'll take E flat. That
E
is
flat,
my
that's
key.
right.
That is my key. I'm happy you remember that.
Yes, sir.
And so it's always important for us to keep in mind that you got to have someone that you're sharing with, someone who is helping you to stay rooted and grounded. And that's a part of sometimes what these can do for you, to let you know that you're not the only one who feels the way you do.
Come on here.
And when you know that you're not alone, guess what? The Bible tells us in everything, there's no temptation taking you, but such is common unto humanity. God is faithful that with the temptation, he'll provide a way of endure. And when you and I understand that whatever you're feeling is genuine, it's real, find someone else, as you said, who is going through something similar. Identify with each other, level set with them, and say, hey, what is God speaking to us in the midst of this? What are the lessons we learned? What are the takeaways? And since this has happened to us, it's probably happening to someone else. So let's find a way we can share and help someone else. So let's do it by way of a podcast. Let's do it by way of whatever recordings we have that other people might know that, yeah, life is difficult. It's not easy. It's difficult. And there are going to be all the things that happen. You know, Joe, that, you know, last year, my mom, your grandmother, passed away in the midst of all of this. Well, you know, I'm the youngest of the 9 kids, and I was the one who had to do the eulogy.
Right.
And so, you know, you have all of those things that happen with you personally, as well as the things that happen with you professionally. I can tell you there was a couple weeks where I had 3 and 4 funerals in one given week, and you think about all of that, but then you have to remind yourself that ministry is there to encourage the believers as well as the unbelievers. Now, everybody wasn't at the funeral home because we were not doing any funerals in our places of worship. They were at the funeral home, but guess what? They were being streamed, and family members were watching. You know, I can remember there was one funeral that I did that none of the family felt comfortable coming out. It was me, the mortician, and the deceased.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that was different.
Yeah.
That was really different
I'm
because
sure.
I knew they were out there. I couldn't see them, but still I wanted to speak to them.
And
And
you
that's
needed
where
the
that
word.
goes.
Yes.
That's where that goes. You know, the choir, the minister, everybody doing their part of worship. You might not physically see people, but they needed to hear the word. And so that's the reason why I want to encourage those of you who've been on the front line of ministry, those who've been on the backside of ministry, those who've been doing the support part with the ministry. You know, you always have to realize that it's beyond you. It's beyond us. It's doing the work that Christ has commissioned us to do. And therefore, you never know, because with electronic medium, the way we have it nowadays, you know, before, when we did our houses of worship, yeah, people who might be there physically are being touched. But, you know, this COVID situation has caused all of us to have international ministries. My pastor friends in India that we support, they listen to, they watch, they participate, they ask us, you know, thank you for the encouragement. You know, we send resources there, we send money there. Our brothers and sisters in Liberia, in Nigeria, in Ghana, and all the places that we have direct ministry, as well as with Lot Carey Fire Missionary Convention, and then other agencies, we're able to still do ministry. But, you know, we were able to do ministry just like you guys are able to do ministry, because it were those people who are the support people. You know, thank you all, because I know had it not been for, at our congregation, we don't call people members.
Right.
We call them ministry partners.
Right.
So we all partner together in ministry, and all of us have a different phase of our partnership. There are those who have never set foot back on the campus due to the pandemic, because some of them were living with cancer, some of them were going to dialysis, and they knew they couldn't have the exposure. But guess what? They kept sending their financial resources. And it allowed us to be able to say, like the good old song said, you can count on me, you know, for loving-hearted service. And so it becomes the moment that all of us, we have to realize that we touch people in ways that you would never fathom, ways in which you would never see. If you look at the parable that you find of the sower of the seeds,
Right.
you drop the seeds. It's your job to sow.
Yes.
God sends someone else to send down rain. Someone else does all of that, but the harvesting belongs to the Lord. And so there are souls, there are people that have been reached because of your tenacious spirit that I'm not going to give up. And so don't give up, because the people who are watching you, they really watch you, and they say thank you. I know for us in our congregation, I have done about 427 audio recordings in the past 18 months.
And they're pretty awesome too.
Well, you're very kind and gracious. I thank you so very much. And so you know, we try to get in, get out, give people what they need, give them what they need. And you're doing the same thing right now. And you have an audience that's not the audience that I might reach. And that's the reason why we need so many different people to do ministry. You know, my son, he does our young adult ministry, okay? And so even before the pandemic, they did their ministry through and by Zoom.
Wow.
Before the pandemic.
They were already there.
Already there. And we were just so happy that it was God that allowed us to have the technology before it was necessary. It was available. And, you know, and I tell every congregation, do what you can to make sure that you're technologically on the edge. You make the investment, because when you make the investment, you have to tell yourself your seed's in the ground, it is going to come up. You know, you never see it time you plant it. You have to give it some time of watering, some time of rain, some time of sun, some time of intense heat, and then you see the harvest. And I think it's always important for congregations to do that.
Man, that's some good stuff. And y'all know, like I always say, you know, that might not be in the book, but that's still a word. And Uncle Paul actually gave y'all a whole bunch of word too, y'all. Man, y'all might want to go ahead and make sure y'all rewind that, because that's probably more scripts than y'all probably hear in like all of the rest of my podcasts all the way through.
I'll have to do a little bit more mentoring with you.
Yes. Y'all keep praying for me and make sure that you go ahead and pray that he stays in my life like that. So, Uncle Paul, I did want to make sure that you get a chance to tell everybody out there about where you are.
Sure.
Also, where they can find you on your social media, not only for just your at Fountain of Raleigh, but there might be some people out there that be like, you know what, I really like what he had to say. How can somebody reach out to you?
You can just Google my name, Paul L. Anderson. My son is Paul L. Anderson II, but I'm Paul Anderson. You'll find that I'm out there on just about every platform you can look for and find. But our church is the fountainofraleigh.org. So if you just Google the fountainofraleigh.org, you'll find that it's out there. We love partnering with people. We know God always had partnerships. And that's the reason why we partner with local congregations. We partner with those from different perspectives. We have been so blessed that God has blessed us in ministry that we got a chance to help to organize the Interfaith Alliance of Wake County. And so, it's your Christian faith that should always be a testimony. I always remind people that Jesus said that I came to do the will of the Father. Right. And the will of the Father is to share the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. On our website, we say we want to share the gospel of Jesus Christ using words only when necessary. So we try to make sure it's in our words, our actions, and our deeds. And I'm just so grateful that God has blessed us with a congregation of those persons who love to follow God, who don't mind following good pastoral leadership, and do not mind being good supportive leaders, because at our congregation we always know there's only one leader, and that's God, and all the rest of us are co-laborers together. So those of you who want to roll up your sleeves and work with us, we'll be happy to partner with you. It doesn't matter where you are, just as I'm partnering with you today, Joe, and the blessing is all mine. And to all of you out there, I just want to remind you, don't be weary in well-doing, because in due season you shall reap if you faint not. So keep on pressing, and you're going to find out that your end has never come, because God wants you to just keep on going. And so keep on going and keep on growing.
And that's good stuff. Hey, yo, I appreciate you. I appreciate you, Uncle Paul. Hey, we love you. We'll see you next week on the Mailroom.
As we said at the Fountain, because you're exceedingly and abundantly blessed.
I like that. You have a Google? You have a Google search? You can Google it?
Yeah, you can Google.
I gotta do better, family.